Climb into the cockpit with pilot and Link Square's Chief Legal Officer, Tim Perilla, as he invites legal leaders aboard to share advice that will help you navigate even the most turbulent times of in-house counsel work. We'll cover a range of topics from data privacy to legal team structure to public company transactions and beyond. You don't want to miss this series. Fasten your seatbelt and prepare for takeoff. You're listening to Cockpit Counsel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Cockpit Counsel. My name's Tim. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at Link Squares. With us, as always, is our producer, Alyssa Brazino. And if you enjoy our content, give us a like, follow on all the socials, and let's get to it. So today we're going to be talking about harnessing data with Celina Grippo. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So every time we start off our podcast the same way, it is aviation themed. What is your pre-flight ritual?
I don't really have a specific one. Depends on where I'm traveling. But for sure, I aim to be present. Airports are chaotic.
Yes.
There could be changes, flight delayed, cancel. So I try to be really present. So I'm aware of my surroundings and I can make decisions quickly if needed and move quickly. So that's the main thing. Like, I get out of the car and I remind myself, to be present, take a deep breath.
Right.
Let's rock and roll.
I wish more people were like that, because you see people in airports and they're just they're in another
Frazzled.
world, or just buried in their phone like this, just walking around. It's like, all right, just look up for 10 seconds,
Yeah, I put my phone away and, just be like, okay, check the flight, everything before. And that's would be the one thing I'm consistent in doing.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about your career path. So you're in legal ops. How did you get into legal ops?
Well, at my current role at Tealium, I'm part of the legal department, and my CLO started to hear legal ops. It'd be a nice to have. Legal ops. So he basically appointed me to be the legal ops in our team, and it was based on conversations on how my mind worked in a certain way of always thinking about efficiency and, reducing manual workloads and being organized and rolling things out with a process versus legal for a long time is just always buried under a lot of work.
Yeah.
That it doesn't give us at times that creativity to think about process or implementing process, because we just have to get the work done.
Yeah, exactly. It's always difficult to pick your head up when you just have a mountain of work and say, am I working in the right way?
Yeah, you just know that you have to finish it. You have to get it done, and you have, end of quarter, end of month, whatever you need to focus on, and it turns into a cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many, is it just you in legal ops at Tealium?
Currently, yes.
Yeah, okay. So so you were counsel at Tealium and transitioned into this role?
I started at Tealium as overseeing the contract part,
Okay.
also negotiating contracts, so contracts manager.
Okay, yep.
And supporting contract negotiations and draftings and getting the contract across the finish line.
Right.
But with that came also starting for me to start to think about where did our paper lives?
Yeah.
Is it accessible? Do they have the right version? And I think Phil, my CLO, noticed that, and we decided that this was going to be my new role. I was going to oversee the legal operations at Tealium, and that shifted a lot of my work, and it created actually a lot of opportunity for me to work with other departments.
Yeah.
Because now I needed to understand what our customers needed. And that is the rest of my org in different departments.
That's awesome. So first of all, it's really, really cool that your CLO is that forward thinking and just be like, all right, we need to invest in this area. How did you go about starting to build relationships across the rest of the business?
Basically reaching out to the person I knew worked in that department, like marketing. Of course, reviewing contracts for years, you know who to go to.
Right.
And then start that conversation, and it was received with like, oh, so cool, we would like this.
Yeah.
Or it'd be great if this. And that's how the conversation just started, just reaching out to our channel team and somebody in sales, somebody in CSMs, people that I had been working with in my role, and just started to pick their brains, what do you think? And then you get honest feedback.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you also get what you sometimes legal doesn't get. Like, I think you guys do a great job, and I know you guys are really busy. Like, oh, thank you.
It's always nice to get that little bit of affirmation. Like, if you can just get one per quarter, like one appreciative moment.
Thank you.
It like makes all the difference in the world.
It does.
So, how do you think about data in your organization?
In my organization, Tealium is data.
Yeah.
CDP. And that's one of the main things I started to think about when I came into this role. We are out there saying we are the best CDP, and it's all data. So how do we as a legal department begin to harness data that is useful to us?
Yeah.
And you have to look at what is important to each org, depending on your private company, public company, if you're a regulated entity. Yeah. And then look at the data that's coming in and pick key points that you might want to start looking at.
Yeah.
Because I can say, oh, I have all of this data, but if you're not using it or looking at it, it's just data.
Right.
So you have to start siloing it, and okay, I can get all of our regions, and I can report on all of our contracts per region. Right. Because we're a global company. But what good does that do us?
Right.
What it would be the benefit of that metric. Yeah. And okay, we can tag all of our DPAs. Well, that was a good one because, with GDPR and privacy laws changing constantly, we might want to know all of the DPAs that are out there.
Right.
Quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just identifying your company's needs, aligning them with corporate goals, and also working with the legal team constantly, and my CLO, like, this is what we have, how can we use it to make our day easier? Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for data being put into the appropriate context.
Yes.
Right? Because if it's not useful, if it's not something that you're going to either evaluate performance or make decisions based upon, then it's not even worth collecting.
Yes.
Like at that point, it's just data for data's sake.
It just sounds really cool to say I have all this data and I can collect all of these points, but then what are you going to do with them?
Yeah, and like the quick next step becomes like it's almost embarrassing that you have that much data and aren't doing anything with it. Right.
Yes. And I get really good questions from our compliance also, like, hey, by the way, in all of these key points that we're tracking, do we have this? And it's even cooler when you can say, actually, we do. You need it? Let's go find it.
Yeah. So what are some of the and not even getting specific with Tealium, but for like any legal ops professionals out there starting to think about data, what are your recommendations of some things that they should just immediately start tracking, and why?
What they should? I think it's really important to start tracking risk.
Yep.
Risk in your contracts, specifically the contracts that are not on your paper.
Okay.
Because you know what's on your paper, even if it was paper from 3 or 4 years ago, you have a standard of how you do business. But start tracking, customer paper and risk that you have agreed to, DPAs that are not yours.
Yeah.
So looking at what is not standard, it's really important because usually that's where you need to go back and look.
Yeah.
Because you can say 90% answer, this is what we have agreed to. But then you have that small batch that it's not in everybody's mind present, the nuances of specific contracts.
Right.
Even with your vendors.
Yeah.
So.
And those are the ones that, of course, are going to cause the biggest problems for it. Hopefully, those are the ones that, hopefully it's not your form that
and
causes the problem.
And it could be something really easy as in a notice provision.
Yeah.
It could be a notice provision. So you have your standard language and you know how to. You decide to change the address of one of your subsidiaries. Wait.
Right.
You have to pause and think, is there 1 or 2, 3, or 100 contracts out there where I have to actually send formal notice
Right.
of this change? So it's just
Yeah.
little things like that that make you think, okay, I need to be able to access quickly everything that is not my standard
Yeah.
and identify where do I need to reach out, email, and additional steps, additional actions that
Yeah.
need to be taken.
So as far as like processes that you think are critical to start thinking about, like whether it's working with a sales team, working with other parts of the organization, where do you think someone who's like first legal ops should focus initially?
What I found that is working for me is identifying the needs of the org, then identifying the needs of your legal department.
Okay.
Because they might not look the same org to org. Some organizations have legal departments that are heavy on the litigation part or managing IP. So maybe that one has to be your priority.
Yeah.
Where I work is a SaaS company. So for us, it's contracts
Right.
and compliance. So it's identifying the needs of the org and then the needs of your legal team and doing an alignment.
Yeah.
Because you can't make everybody happy. You have to make your team efficient
Right.
in
right.
order to deliver the goals of the org. So it's basically sitting down and having conversations and looking what can be done, what you have already in place. I love the fact that now legal has access to a tech stack.
Yeah.
Before we had to go and grab another team's stack and try to make it work for our needs, an IT tool, a marketing tool.
Right.
There's been technology in the legal field for a long time, but mostly billing and stuff that
Right. Right.
it doesn't apply when you work in-house. And the ability now that we have this technology and innovation in our field is great, because then you need to start doing, what kind of tool do I need and what would it do?
Yeah. So how do you think about evaluating different tools, and how do you go about pushing the adoption? We talked. I know we
yes.
talked a little bit about it yesterday.
Change management,
Yeah.
Favorite topic.
Yeah.
Identifying the needs, what you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you have is what you have working. If it's not working, why? What are the limitations? Is there another tool in your org that might be able to provide what you're looking for? That's the first thing, right? You're not
Right.
going to go in and want to spend on something that maybe your marketing team already has.
Right. Right.
And it's just about adding users. So it's just understanding what you need to accomplish. If you need a CLM, my CLM needs to work this way.
Right.
Again, it works different for a different organization. Of healthcare, manufacturing, would be
Right.
different, SaaS. So for me, it was identifying what we needed, something that would be easy to use for a legal team, something that was intuitive, something that was designed for a legal team was really important, because we do have a way of looking at things differently
Mm-hmm.
and trying to, navigate things, how we look at them,
Right.
how we search,
Yeah.
searching capabilities, filters, all that good stuff. And once you have identified, you need to, what would be the benefit of you getting a new tool? What
Right.
are you seeking to improve? What are you seeking to replace? And what is your return on investment? Because you also have to sell it to not only the legal team, but potential other stakeholders that are involved in the legal team, and say, hey, if we get this tool, our response time might reduce by 50%, because now we'll be getting notified sooner, or there will be more visibility into the urgency of the matter, and somebody else will be, that's great.
Yeah.
Could we be able also to get a status when it's moving through legal? So that's
Right.
something to think about. So you involve your stakeholders with your work.
Yep.
Their wish list might not be the same as your wish list.
Right.
But if you come into a nice compromise, then you start looking at tools.
Yeah.
What is what I definitely need and what is a nice to have.
Yeah.
For us to function A, B, C, D, I need a CLM that will create templates. We'll use our own templates. We'll send out our templates, create a clause library, a playbook that's accessible, notifies, and then all of the nice to haves.
Right.
And then you go from there. Integrations is also another big part.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time, people will ask me about, what should I look for in legal tech? And I'm like, you need to do two things first. You need to figure out what problem you're trying to solve, which is exactly what you're saying. And two, are you capable of affecting change in your organization? Yeah. Because no matter what tool you buy, you're going to have to use the tool.
Yes.
It's sort of in the way that it's designed, unless you're doing like a homegrown solution that's like custom built for you. Everything else, you're just going to have to incorporate the tool in order to get that benefit.
Yes.
So I tell people, if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, and if you don't think you can affect change, then just put your money back in your pocket, because it's not going to be successful for you.
Yes, and you touched on something really important. This is your tool. So how does the tool work to your benefit? And you have to get creative. Mm-hmm. You have to get creative and maybe recreate process that's different than what you had, because the process that you had right now was you had no tool, or you had a tool that kind of did what you needed. Right. So you created a process around what you have.
Yeah.
So change management, it's a big one, because you might have to totally redo the process, because this is the process over here.
And it always makes me laugh, like the resistance to change that a lot of lawyers have on it, because it's like, if everything were working perfectly, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. True. Like, obviously something is wrong.
Yes.
Like, we must change it, right?
Yes. And it is I always say, I'm not going to start to compare apples to oranges. That's the main thing. Over here, a lot of manual stuff. Over here, there'll be automation. You will have to learn the automation, but the more you use it, it becomes more intuitive.
Right.
The same way that I taught you over here how to use this apple, I'm going to show you how to use the orange.
Right. Right.
But it's still met with like, oh, do we have to? Right. Because I get it. It's then having to learn something new, learning the process, but then you have to do your day job.
Yeah.
Right? So people are like, okay, how much time is this going to take away from what I need to accomplish in the day? And then that's the resistance.
Yeah.
So constant encouragement, talking about the benefits, training. I offer always one-on-ones.
Yeah.
When you do a group training, there's always somebody that asks questions, and there's always somebody that will not ask a question. So I said, hey, you want to talk one-on-one later? And the majority of times I get a yes. And I don't mind explaining as many times as needed, or when somebody says, oh, I have a dumb question. And for me, there's no dumb questions, because if you have a question, then I want to help you know the answer. Right. And it will be in my long-term benefit if I really make sure you know the answer.
Exactly.
Yeah. And transitioning a little bit to advice for our listeners, so busy legal professionals, what advice do you have on prioritizing work? And there's a lot on your plate.
Prioritizing work. Task management tool is important. Project management tool, now there's available for the legal department. And having that visibility as in low, medium, high, because you can have a lot in one day. I think intuitively we know what needs our attention, just based on years of experience, based on who it's coming from. Yep. Based on the email that you're getting outside of process and who's copied on that email, that you need to handle that. But for my own sanity, I like to know everything that I'm working on. I might intuitively know that I need to grab this one and this one like today,
Yeah.
But I like knowing and visually seeing what I have to work on. And I put the subject, draft a letter, review X contract,
Right.
respond to some X email. And I'm able to see it. And then it's low, medium, no rush, high.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then how do you present on your output to maybe like your CLO? And then also how do you guys present on the legal team's output as a whole?
We're just starting to work on that.
Nice.
We just acquired a CLM,
Nice.
Link Squares, and we're rolling it out in phases and trying to get the best benefits out of all the capabilities and features. So that's something that we didn't have. We did not have an accurate output of our work. So I'm really excited for that piece, that we're going to be able to capture not only all of our contractual work, but capture what we work on, because we work on a lot of stuff: corporate compliance, security, privacy, employment, HR matters, even just supporting different departments on, hey, I have a question, we want to do this, how do we do it?
Right.
Or we're having an event and this is the form that they sent us. Even though it's a contract, but it might not be a contract, might be just like a little letter. So you have a bunch of stuff. Or Celina, where is our MSA?
Right.
And it might take you 15 minutes to get to them or send them a copy. And all of that is not captured anywhere.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's important. And with so much on your plate, do you have any advice for listeners on work-life balance?
I constantly work on that. Work-life balance, for me, having something to do after work, something to look forward to, makes me happy, makes me think that I'm not just working so many hours a week. Sometimes during the work week, the looking forward to, it's something that you're doing on the weekend. I love to cook, so that's a big detachment for me at the end of my workday to cook, because it's to create something that's different that I've been working on the whole day. Feeding my loved ones is something that makes me happy. So I've learned to identify that in myself, and just doing the things that make you happy. And it could be just making dinner, might make you happy, and sitting down and being present and having a meal at your end of the day, or you have a concert that you're going to go at the weekend. That's something to look forward. Sometimes I'll just plan to make a call to a friend I haven't spoken to, like live. Sometimes with text, that's the only way you're communicating. So I'll make it a point to call and just speak to somebody on the phone that I care about. And that's how, for me, it works to shift my mind and not just be thinking about work. Just doing something that makes me happy.
That's really great advice. Awesome. Well, we end every episode with some rapid fire questions. So if you're ready, what is your hot take on legal ops?
It's here to stay.
Love that.
It's no longer a nice to have.
Yeah.
It is now becoming an essential part of a legal department.
What is your number one tip for building relationships across the organization?
Emotional intelligence and active listening.
What is the best career advice that you've ever given or received?
I think it has differences as you go through your career. For me, it's to trust in yourself. You're more capable than we sometimes give our own selves credit for. So it's trust in myself. I probably the majority of the time have the answer, and if not, trust that you'll be able to find it.
So we like to ask about causes that are close to your heart that we can amplify. And you had an awesome story at dinner yesterday. And I'm just going to let you launch into it, talk about the cause, and yeah.
So for the last almost 19 years, I volunteer for a youth mentoring program. I live in San Diego, and the nonprofit is called Mana de San Diego, MA. NA. And it's a Latina nonprofit encouraging and empowering women to finish school at whatever stage they are. But this program is just specifically for 12 to 18. And it's first generation finishing high school, first generation going to college, and underserved communities where they don't know what the next chapter of their education looks like. And it's exposing them to not only what you need to do to graduate high school and go to college, what college looks like, 4-year college, community college, a university, the different systems in state. It's also what careers are out there right now. What does it look like to work in all of these professions? And in 19 years, those professions are rapidly changing. From being doctors and attorneys to now, I want to be a influencer. You have to think about but does that really pay the bills? And just providing information that I've always thought that to make decisions, educated information and educated choices bring you to a better decision-making process. So in those 19 years, this is something I just love to do, and I do it without expecting anything in return. Because of the work that I do in my community and meeting different people that come and speak to the girls, I met Lieutenant Commander in the U.S. Navy that loved what I did and the partnership that we created in providing more resources for the girls, that he nominated me to be a distinguished visitor for the U.S. Navy.
So awesome.
Wow.
It was a very big honor, still one that makes my heart full. It was a very long process to get accepted as such. And what does that mean? Well, I got to fly out of a U.S. base and land on a U.S. aircraft carrier somewhere out in the Pacific Ocean. Land on a carrier is a 1-mile runway,
Wow.
so you get training that is a controlled crash. So,
Wow.
so that was a highlight of my life. I was able to stay a couple of days on board with the men and women that serve and just get to see their life. The cool part in the beginning of the movie Top Gun, you see the color boys
Right.
signaling the flights. Well, I was on that flight deck as F-18s were taking off and landing, and I couldn't believe I was standing
so
there
cool.
as a civilian.
Yeah.
So something that my charity work led me to is one of the best experiences I've had. And it also taught me a lot about our military and the men and women that serve. And it just gave me a whole other view of a life I've never been exposed to, and also very grateful for.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. Well, Celina, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was a great
Thank you.
conversation. And we're going to have you back.
Part 2, I'm all for it. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. All right. And we'll see you all next time.